To the New England Football Show presented by Mortgage Right. I'm your host, John Sarianides. And as always, I'm joined by my partner, Kevin Stone. Kevin, how are you this evening?
Doing good, man. How are you?
I'm doing all right. And before we get started here, I do want to remind you that we are brought to you by Mortgage Right. Give our good friend Herb Devine a call at 781-254-2846 or shoot him an email at herb@mortgageright.com. The top real estate season is upon us. It is the spring season. If you are planning on entering the market as a seller, first-time home buyer, or if you're looking to refinance, you need experience in your corner. Herb Devine is that man. Again, give him a call at 781-254-2846, or you could shoot him an email at herb@mortgageright.com. Units team are available anytime, including nights and weekends. All right, Kevin, let's just jump right into it. Of course, Patriots are keeping us busy. I mean, there's media availability tomorrow. Safety Kyle Duggar and backup quarterback Josh Dobbs are scheduled to meet with the media. Of course, the big news last week was Drake Maye met with the local media for the first time since January. This was last Thursday. You were there. Just some initial impressions on what you heard from Maye. For me, Kevin, this is a big year for Drake Maye. He's obviously, and again, stating the obvious, but he's got to take the next step in all areas of his game, from leadership to improved play on the field, to taking care of the football, to becoming what he could become based on his physical ability. But what were some impressions that you had after hearing him speak last Thursday?
So I wrote it in the headline with the story I ended up putting up at anyfootballjournal.com. It's his team and he knows it. And it's clear he's ready to take that next step. I think last year, look, that was a weird spot for him, right? Like you have the guy in front of you who's named the starter, even though your head coach tells the media and the public that you deserve the job. So right off the bat, he was sort of handcuffed in terms of being able to be a leader. So once he was able to, you saw he had no problem criticizing people. Like if you remember some of the post games that he had, whether it was home or road, he wasn't afraid to speak his mind. But again, it feels like it took him a while to get there because of how that situation played out. So, excuse me, I think he's ready for that next step. But ultimately, you need to see it on the field. Like there's going to be one of two storylines that are glaring. It's either sophomore slump or the second year jump, right? Like there's no in between. It's going to be one of those two things with him throughout the season. I think it's going to be that year two jump. But look, I'm curious to see how he handles certain things. Like, what if Steph Diggs does start complaining about the ball? What if the young receivers, excuse me, like last year, are getting frustrated, like a Kyle Williams? I don't think he's going to be like it was last year, but who knows? He's going to have to deal with some stuff that comes up. He's got a new head coach, new OC. What happens early on in camp when they're not seeing things the same way? So there's a lot of stuff he's going to have to prove that he can do as a leader, but I think he's ready.
Yeah, I agree with you. Look, I think he's ready to lead. I'm not worried about that. For me, it's more of what he does on the field. Does he take that next step in terms of his development, both as a passer, taking care of the football, making plays off scripted, which he did a lot of last year? He's going to have to continue to do that this year, but he's also going to have to learn to play in a new system and play within that system. And we know what Josh McDaniels' body of work is with young quarterbacks. We saw it in 2021 with Mac Jones. Only real productive season, I should say, Jones had as a Patriot. So we know what McDaniels can do in terms of developing a quarterback. It'll be interesting to see how Maye fits into this system, because I still think the majority of what the Patriots do from a philosophical standpoint on offense is going to be what they did for 20 plus years under Bill Belichick when Tom Brady was here. I think it's going to be predominantly those concepts. Again, they'll be refined, there'll be tweaks, there'll be updates to the system. But at the end of the day, as you know, this is not an easy offense to learn for a young quarterback. It's not only a struggle for quarterbacks. In the past, as we've seen, it's also been a struggle for receivers. So these young receivers, as you mentioned, they need to come along, and they can't get frustrated. You mentioned Kyle Williams. He needs to come along. So there are a lot of question marks there, But we already knew going into this thing, regardless who was going to be the head coach of this football team, we knew going in that this was going to need to be a big year for Drake Maye. That's the obvious. But I do think we need to see that growth across the board. Now, he's kind of in a tough spot because he's going to be running his second offense in as many years. That could slow down his development, but I suspect that he is going to take that next step. And you brought a good point. You brought up a good point in your piece in that he knows this is his team, and he's ready to embrace that responsibility and make this his team. And he sounded like a guy who was confident enough to do that on Thursday, and I think that that's important as well. Ken Matthias checks in. Thanks for checking in, Ken. Drake Maye had a lot of praise for offensive coordinator Josh McDaniels last week at the presser. Can Josh take him to a big sophomore jump in year two? I think he can, because I think that this system is so quarterback friendly that I could see Maye from a production standpoint taking that next step statistically. Now, again, it'll be interesting to see, do they run him on designed quarterback runs? Do they expand the offense and incorporate more RPOs? Do they shift in motion more? Are they more creative with gadgets? That's to be determined. We're not really going to get a sense of what they're going to be doing in terms of that stuff until we get into training camp. But I would suspect, at least based on resume and McDaniel's pedigree, there's no doubt, Kevin, that Drake Maye should take the next step in his development under Josh McDaniels.
Yeah, look, he talked about it last week. He was asked, how hard is it learning this offense and learning the language? And he said, it's fun to watch the old Patriots offenses with Brady and kind of how he calls everything out. This better than most. He's going to have a lot on his plate when he gets up to the line of scrimmage. Like, he's going to have to call everything out and make sure he sets the protection. So, in terms of in the classroom, so to speak, he's going to have a lot to learn, and he's already on, sort of that learning plan, I guess, for lack of a better term. But I'm confident. Look, every college quarterback nowadays, there's a learning curve there. The offense is just different. So there's going to be a learning curve in training camp. It might not look all that pretty for the fans that go out there and watch, but I do think by the time September rolls around, I think he's going to be functional in this offense. And you've said this for months now. Yes, it's going to be the same Patriots offense, but it's not. Like, he's not Tom Brady, and everybody knows it. So if fans are expecting him, drop back, look like Tom Brady, kind of dink and dunk around the field, I'm not sure that's the exact Patriots offense we're going to see. But again, I'm with you. I think he's going to be okay learning this offense and adapting to Josh McDaniels.
Yeah, I think he will be too. That there will be a learning curve there. I mean, this is, look, from a volume standpoint, this is a much different scheme than what Van Pelt ran last year. And the thing is, with that modern West Coast offense, there is a lot of volume there. There are a lot of plays there. But you got to remember there are different variations of that offense. If you look at what McVay does in LA, he's pretty much an 11 personnel 95% of the time. Then you look at what Shanahan does in San Francisco, and he does more two-back stuff. He blends in the two backs, the two tight ends. He does more with personnel groupings. There's that version of the offense. And then there's what Mike McDaniel does in Miami with the motion and the shifting and the moving guys around and trying to create matchups in space. So that offense can be complicated, but I think that this traditional, what I like to call East Coast offense that the Patriots ran here for years, I think that it's a more multiple offense. I think there's more volume in the offense. And I think if you're Drake Maye, this spring is so important for him because he's really going to have to learn it all, absorb it all. And then on top of all that, he's also going to have to get on the same page with a lot of these new faces that were brought in. It's not just Stephon Diggs. It's Matt Collins. You mentioned Kyle Williams, Travion Henderson. When the rookies get here, when those guys show up, he's going to have to get on the same page with those guys as well. So it's going to be a real challenge for him as a second-year quarterback, not just to learn the offense for himself, but then to also learn how these other pieces fit the offense and how they operate within the scheme. Because as a quarterback, he's got to know just as much as they do what they're doing, but also he's got to remember and know what he's doing. And as you mentioned, in terms of setting the protections, he's got to manage the game at the line of scrimmage too. So there's going to be a lot on his plate. And I think we're going to get a pretty good indication early on in terms of where he is in regards to his comfort level with this system and if he can, in fact, take that next step in year 2.
Yeah, look, he acknowledged as a rookie, I think his exact term was drinking water through a fire hose. So yes, there's still more learning to do, but just not having to be accustomed or get accustomed to life in the NFL, I think is huge and should help his confidence this year too.
Yeah, and Ken checks in with a healthy Stephon Diggs. What tips and tricks can he bring to this offense, and especially Drake Maye, as he's worked with Josh Allen and C.J. Stroud in the past? It's not so much that he can bring tips and tricks that are going to help the quarterback. It's going to be important that the two of them get on the same page relatively quickly. I think Diggs' value in terms of tips and tricks is going to be more for the younger receivers. But when it comes to Drake Maye, it's going to be vitally important that they get a lot of work in together. Once Diggs is cleared and can handle running at 100% and running a full route tree, once he's at that point, the two of them are going to have to spend a lot of time together, both in the film room and on the field, getting on the same page, working on their timing, their rhythm, and having an understanding of where Drake wants the ball and where Diggs wants to be to receive the ball. So, that's going to take some time, but it's not so much about Stephon Diggs teaching him tricks or trades. It's going to be more about them getting on the same page and also developing some trust because, look, in a perfect world, Stephon Diggs is your number one receiver. He's your number one option in the passing game. You want to get him the ball as much as possible. Well, they're going to have to work on all of that throughout the summer and into the fall so that they can get to a place where Maye is comfortable with him. Maye talked about playing with Diggs the other day, and he talked about the fact that he used them in Madden or whatever he said. He came off almost a little starstruck there. But the important piece here is that they get on the same page.
Yeah, it's funny. I was actually worried when he said that line. I don't want necessarily my second year quarterback being starstruck by a receiver he's going to need to depend on. But no, in terms of tricks he can show, it's McDaniels, and I want to see what he can show him in terms of tips and tricks at the line or stuff like that, things to watch for that Brady used to watch for. That's what I'm most curious to see. But I'm with you in terms of Diggs. Maybe here or there, hey, throw it to a back shoulder here instead of here, something small like that. But for me, it's McDaniels that can really kind of open his bag of tricks and show them to Drake Maye.
Good friend Bill Vaughn checks in. He says O-line battles are going to be UT. I don't know. I don't know if Bill's the kind of guy that uses the term lit, but we're going to go with it, Bill. We're going to assume that you mean that they're going to be lit. Thanks for checking in, Bill. Appreciate you as always. Yeah. Well, the offensive line, like it has been the last couple of years, is going to be a point of emphasis as we go into camp and during training camp. A lot of eyes are going to be on this group. Obviously, a lot of eyes are going to be on Will Campbell at left tackle. A lot of eyes are going to be on Bradbury at center. What do you do at left guard? Is it Cole Strange? Is it Layden Robinson? Bill's next question, I think, is also a valid one when it comes to the O-line. Bill says, interesting. I think Cole Strange has a chance to be the center if healthy. Wasn't bad last year. That's the other thing I was going to say. That's a possibility as well. Does Cole Strange play center? I think in a perfect world,
Bradbury.
They would want Bradbury to be the starting center and Cole Strange to be the option up. I think we knew that all along. But I think in a perfect world, Cole Strange would be your left guard.
Yeah, no, I agree. Look, if you sign Bradbury and he can't start, or we're already off to a bad start in terms of the free agent return. So
it's a given that he's your starting center. I think it's a pretty good chance.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a given.
No, so that's fair. I'd still rather him starting than Cole Strange if it's coming down to those two, though.
Well, I think it depends on what you thought of Strange's performance in those last two games of the year. He started at center against the Chargers and the Bills. I thought he handled the zone against the Chargers. I thought he had some good moments in that game. I thought against the Bills, he had some good moments, but he also struggled at times. And the thing that was discouraging about that performance is that was against their backups. So, again, look, you're talking about a guy who's 6'4", 307, who's got good length. He's athletic. He's tough. Biggest knock on Strange thus far in his career is he hasn't been able to stay healthy. When he's been able to stay healthy, and play at a consistently high level, he's been pretty good for them. When he hasn't been able to do that, he hasn't been very good for them, or he hasn't been available because he's been hurt. So obviously, this is going to be a big rest of the offseason and fall camp for Strange. But again, I think in a perfect world, come opening week, you're trotting out Campbell, Strange, Bradbury, Onwenu, Moses as your starting five.
No, I agree, 100%.
Yeah. Thanks again for checking in, Bill. We really do appreciate it. One other point that I think was worth noting that May made was he talked about Vrabel, and he talked about the culture and the expectations. And I think in many ways, a lot of what May had to say is a sentiment that's been echoed by players throughout this offseason that we've spoken to about Vrabel and the shift in culture and the expectations. You know, we've talked about it being noticeable up there from a media lens, but I think the players are reinforcing that there's been an obvious change in terms of the approach, the way they're going to operate, the expectations. And I know a lot of people made a lot out of Mike Vrabel's first team meeting with the team. Those are basic expectations. Once we get into the regular season, those expectations are going to change. The ante's going to be upped. But bottom line is, it seems like the message when it comes to Mike Vrabel has been pretty universal so far.
Yeah, on that first meeting, when I first saw that, and you know this is a high school coach, that's standard day one high school sports.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people made a lot out of that. I mean, look, let's be honest here. If these guys in the NFL who are making millions of dollars can't do that, then they shouldn't be there. It's
right,
really
like
that
is
that's not asking much.
No, that was the most basic team meeting I've ever heard. Before we get too far ahead, I just want to go back to Diggs really quick. I asked Austin Hooper last week just sort of what it's been like to be a teammate of his, and he called him a freak athlete and said you can see the explosion already. So look, I don't want to get too far ahead, but if he's ready to go, that's a huge step for this offense. Again, it's only May, but that's a huge sort of development to keep an eye on. If he is explosive this early on, you don't want to put high expectations on him like that. But man, if Drake Maye said the same thing, you could see it at the top of his route. The explosion out of it. So I'm curious to see just how ready he is. They might have underplayed that a little bit when they signed him. But going back to your other point, I'm sorry, what was it? I completely forget. You just said it too.
Vrabel and the different philosophy and the style.
No, so look, we've heard the one thing that's interesting that I feel like every single player has said is, well, he knows what he's doing. He's done it before. So they can get that sense that he's more comfortable than Mayo was, and that's to be expected, of course. But you find out how important that sort of basic knowledge of how to run a building is for players, right? Like there's a respect level there because he's done it that Mayo just couldn't achieve even as a former player. So I think that's been huge.
Yeah, and again, it comes from experience. I think that's the bottom line here. He's been a head coach before. He's run a program before. He's managed a staff before. He's dealt with players in that role before. He's planned their menus before. He's done the job, and there's something to be said for it. Look, I'm all for giving people their first shot and giving them their opportunity. I mean, people aren't going to become successful in any endeavor if they don't get that first shot, if they don't get their initial opportunity. I'm all for it. But if you're an 83, 84-year-old owner of a team and you want to win now, you can't be giving guys their first shot. And that's where I think the Patriots ultimately went wrong with Mayo. It's not that Mayo can't be a good head coach or couldn't be a good head coach, but he needed to cut his teeth more. He needed more experience. And I think that's what it comes back to. I think that's the difference the players talk about. It's not a slight at Mayo. They're not trying to poke fun at him. They're not saying anything negative necessarily about their former coach. They're simply pointing out that it's abundantly obvious that one guy is experienced in the role and the other guy didn't. And look, we knew that. It's not like it's breaking news to us.
No, and what do you think about the hands-on stuff? Is too much made of that? Because I love it. And I know it's not a major thing. Like it's nice to have your coach involved, obviously, but I do think there's a sense of camaraderie to build there this early on with that stuff.
Well, it's a big deal because the head coach in the NFL is a CEO. and they're an overseer, and they run the entire operation on the field. And because of that, whenever you do get a head coach that's hands-on or might call an offense or might call a defense or might even coach a position, depending on the circumstances, whenever you get a head coach like that, it does tend to surprise people because it bucks the trend that we've seen in the last 20, 25 years in the NFL or longer even, really. You can go back into the 80s and 70s. It does buck the trend of the head coach being more of a CEO and an overseer and relying on coordinators and position coaches to run the team schematically. I think I love it too. I think it speaks to the fact that he's a former player. He's comfortable in his own skin. He understands what it takes to play at that level. He's been through the rigors, and he's relatable to the players. And I think him being willing to put a padded vest on and get put on his ass, or him jump in a drill and demonstrate, I think what it says is, hey, man, this is how I did it. I had a pretty good career. I was pretty successful. This is how I want you to do it. Watch me do it. I'm going to be more hands-on than the average head coach. I'm going to demonstrate what I want. So then that way, when it comes game day, you can do what I ask you to do. And look, Drake Maye did some of that stuff too. I mean, again, former player, very comfortable in terms of jumping in and sharing his tricks of the trade, if you will, with his players. But I also think, like I said, I also think it's endearing. I think players are going to look at that and say, hey, man, he's been there. He's been in the trenches. He's one of us. And he continues to have that mentality, that dog mentality, that mentality of a player that I'm still in the foxhole with you guys. I think I think it's great.
Yeah, I do too. The only thing I worry about is if it sort of wears thin at some point, but it's too early for that to happen. So that's a next year problem, I think. You might cut out, John.
I was muted there. It wasn't that the mic cut out. I was muted. I took a coughing break and I was muted. So I'm going to read the question again. What is both of your thoughts on Vrabel cleaning house with guys that have won Super Bowls with the Patriots that are no longer on the team? Stone, what
Love
are
it.
your thoughts?
Love it. How we've talked about this for 2 years now. If you're going to officially,
Stone's the only member of the media in this market that didn't like those guys, apparently.
no, I loved him. You know that.
I know.
Well, look, we talked about this for 2 years now. You only turn the page by getting rid of everybody, and there was some hanging on there, right? So, as much as I love Joe Cardona, he was very pleasant to talk to, always a nice guy, and the same thing can be said for a lot of those guys. You can't turn the page without turning the page completely. So it needed to happen. It was a necessary evil of the business.
Well, it's the old rip the Band-Aid off theory, right? If you're really truly starting over and the franchise is truly going in another direction away from Bill Belichick, you needed to rip that Band-Aid off. And unfortunately, part of that process involved moving on from a Jonathan Jones and a Dietrich Wise and a Joe Cardona like we saw last week and a David Andrews. You needed to move away from those guys. And it's not that those guys weren't going to buy in if you kept them around, if you re-signed Jones, if you re-signed Wise, if you kept Andrews, if you kept Cardona, they would have bought in.
Yeah, he's the ultimate buying guy.
Yeah, that was never going to be the issue. I don't think Vrabel was worried about them not buying in. I think Vrabel looked at them and said, we can get younger. We can get guys that better fit what we want to do schematically at those positions. And we want to bring in players that are going to start fresh with us and buy into what we're selling. And at the end of the day, that's what's important. The hardest guys to win over on a football team at any level, and I've been a head coach, I know this firsthand. In high school and college, it's your seniors and your upperclassmen. In the NFL, it's your veterans. Those are the hardest guys to win over. They have been around. They've played a lot of football. They've seen a lot of football. You really need to focus on them to sell them on the vision. Your younger players, they haven't played as much. They're still wet behind the ears. They're still waiting for their opportunity. They're easier to sell the vision on. But with your veteran players at any level of football, it takes some work to get them to buy in. And I think ultimately, to Vrabel's credit, he has enough cachet that he can move away from those guys and his reputation doesn't take a hit. And again, it's nothing personal. I'm sure that if you ask Vrabel one-on-one privately off the record, he would tell you he respects those guys. He appreciates what they've done for the Patriots, but he would also tell you it was time to move on. That if we need to make our own mark on this thing, and we got to move on from Belichick guys and guys that were here in the past. Yes, their veteran leadership would be welcomed in this locker room and on this football team. They've been veteran leaders for a long time, but you want some of these free agents that you spend big money on to come in and assume some of those leadership roles. The Milton Williams, the Carlton Davises, the Stephon Diggs. You want these guys now to start to fill those roles. It's hard for those guys to fill those roles if Jones, Wise, Andrews, and Cardona are still around. Bill checks back in. He says, was I the only one annoyed during the draft when the NFL interrupts the first round to announce the date of the schedule? Too much. Of course, the NFL will be releasing the schedule a week from Wednesday night, May 14th. We will be all over that. I guess. I mean, look, it's like every other product now, right? I mean, it's not a surprise that the NFL is peddling programming. The NFL, to their credit, whether you agree with it or not, the NFL has cornered the market when it comes to having programming every single month of the calendar year. Okay? Something NFL related is going on every single month of the year, whether it be the playoffs in January, the Super Bowl in February, the combine in March, the draft in April, the schedule release and OTAs in May, mini camps in June, training camp starting in July, training camp and preseason games in August, then the season. The NFL has made it their mission to make sure that they remain top of mind. It is the number one sport in this country. I think it's going to be the number one sport in this country for a long time. I don't see it being topped by any of the other three major sports. And it's not going to be topped by secondary niche sports like soccer or NASCAR or lacrosse. Those sports will never be in the same stratosphere as the NFL in this country. But I think at the end of the day, people don't care. They consume the product. They love the product. And while, yes, it's probably overkill, it's done by design to get people to remember that the NFL is always top of mind.
Was it annoying? Yes, but to your point, there were 600,000 people in Green Bay to watch names get called. So the NFL knows it has everybody over a barrel. Like, think about how many people are going to be anticipating the schedule next Wednesday. Like, we'll be all over Twitter just waiting, waiting and waiting and waiting for that to come out. So the NFL knows it's king, and they know they can annoy people with as many advertisements as they want, because once August rolls around, people will go to the TV every Sunday.
Yep. And that's really true about every level of football now. I mean, football is king across the board. College football is the biggest college sport. High school football is the biggest high school sport. Let's not mince words here. Football is king. It sets the tone. It sets the table. It's the one sport that, for the most part, everybody wants to be good at. I mean, look, it's not taking away from other sports. It's not diminishing them when I say that, but it is a fact. And, of course, let's not forget, you have the betting and gambling piece that's a part of it as well. Ken checks back in. The NFL is all about marketing and being relevant, just like John said. Each month they have something. Yeah, I agree with you, Ken. That's exactly what it's about. And it's smart marketing on their part. I mean, you saw an example of it today. They have Trump announce that the NFL draft is going to be in Washington, D.C. in 2027. I mean, no offense to Gary Bettman, but I don't think the NHL is pulling that off. They're not getting Trump to announce anything. Heck, I don't think the NBA or Major League Baseball are getting that either. It's football.
And they said
that treatment.
And they said they're already expecting 1 million people again to go watch names get called for 3 days. Yep. It's insane.
Well, it's also the most polarizing draft of the four, primarily because the NBA draft only matters really if you're picking in the top 10 or 15.
For like a half hour.
Right. You're going to watch it for about an hour at the most. The NHL and Major League Baseball drafts, outside of the top 5, you don't know where these guys played. I mean, what are you going to sit there and watch the NHL draft and, they're going to tell you the Boston Bruins select a center from the Vancouver,
Right,
from
that you won't see
the Manitoba Moose Knuckles, Connor Jones. Like,
yeah, and you won't see him for 4 or 5 years anyway.
well, but that's changed now. I think guys are
Sure.
coming up sooner and they're playing younger. You're seeing it in both the NHL and baseball. But to your point, they may not. It may take them 4 years to get to the bigs, or it may take them 4 years to get to the big club. So, and again, you've never heard of the guy. You've never heard of the team he played for. I love watching the NHL draft just so I can hear where some of these guys are coming from the Kitchener Rangers or
and
the Oshawa Generals. Like,
and it also speaks to football's popularity. All of these sports are now airing combines, which they never did. Like I never.
That's a great point.
Yep. Major League Baseball combine. I never saw it as a kid. I can only remember it for maybe
the NBA TV does it with the NBA.
Yeah.
The NHL now airs their combine.
Yep.
And MLB Network now airs their combine. And first of all, why the hell are these sports doing combines?
The baseball one's not bad.
Football makes sense. Well, what are they doing though? They're running around the bases and they're hitting. I mean, it's probably the most interesting one outside of the football one, but
yes,
combines make sense in football. They don't make sense in those sports necessarily because it's not so much about the physical attributes like it is in football as much as it is about the physical attributes, but also the skill set that you need to have to hit a baseball, to shoot a puck, to shoot a basketball. Like, I don't know. But to your point, and you're 100% right, this is a byproduct of the NFL. The NFL has set the foundation for modern team sports in this country. Okay, film watching, that wasn't a thing in these other sports. It became a thing after football. Football coaches started watching film. They started breaking it down. They started meeting with players, blah, blah, blah. Now all of a sudden, everybody records games in every sport. Everybody watches film. Like, I mean, that's a football thing. That didn't used to be a basketball thing when I was in high school. They weren't recording the high school basketball games and watching them back. I mean, it's a recent development. You are watching / listening to New England Football Show presented by Mortgage Right. I'm your host, John Sarianides. As always, I'm joined by my partner, Kevin Stone. And we do want to remind you that if you are in the market to purchase your next home and sell your current home, purchase your first home, or refinance, give our good friend Herb Devine a call, 781-254-2846. You can also shoot him an email at herb@mortgageright.com. He and his team are available anytime, including nights and weekends. We got another comment here. Ken jumps back in. Any predictions on whom the Patriots will face week 1, either on the road or at home? Good question. Might be a little early for that. Stone, you got any guesses?
No, it is too early for me, but I will say, and we'll obviously get into the schedule more next week. It shapes up very well for them. Again, teams are brand new. It's hard to know exactly, but on paper, this schedule is much easier than last year's, particularly at home. There's a legitimate chance that they're at least an 8, 9, 10-ish win team and knocking on the door for a playoff spot. I will say that.
Yeah, their home schedule is very favorable. I mean, aside from the AFC East teams, you got the Giants coming in, you got the Raiders coming in,
the Browns.
It's a very, very favorable home schedule. I mean, they could conceivably win 7 games at home. That's not hyperbole. And this is why I've said to people, in my opinion, I think this is a football team that on paper, if you look at their talent level right now, if they stay healthy and as long as May doesn't regress, why can't they win 10 games? They can win at least 3 on the road, maybe even 4. I think 10-7 is a realistic possibility for this team.
And if you look, the road trips aren't very far either. Like, they don't have to travel very much this year or very far. So that's extremely helpful too. And to answer the question, I could see them opening with Buffalo, or having their first primetime game this year against Buffalo with Diggs coming over to New England, something like that. But look, there's not a lot of primetime games for them. I do think they're going to get more than they did because of Diggs, because of Mike Vrabel and all that. But you also remember they said last week there's a new division uniform matchup, so you wonder who that's going to be against. I'd like to think that their main rival is still the Jets, just because of everything that went on in the '90s and then with Mangini and all that stuff. But I could see them opening up against Buffalo in prime time.
Well, they opened up last season on the road in Cincinnati, so obviously that's not going to happen again. They're playing in Cincinnati again this year. I don't see they're not going to open the season in prime time. That's not going to happen realistically. I can see them opening up against a Miami if they're opening up at home. On the road, I mean, I wouldn't mind seeing them open up in Tennessee. Get it right out of the way. Mike Vrabel returns to Tennessee. Revenge game for him. You could potentially see that.
So real quick, to your Miami point, can we get back to playing them early and having them come up here late in the season? Like when I was a kid, that was a thing. Like growing up, it was always Miami early on in the season. You deal with the outrageous heat down there. You remember the Troy Brown overtime game. That's always the one that sticks out to me. And then Miami would have to come up here late in the season. Like when did we get away from that? I'd like to see that come back this year.
Well, you don't always get what you want, Stone.
Oh, God,
Matthias comes back and asks, and will they get a primetime game either Sunday night, Monday, or Thursday? Well, they're definitely going to play a Thursday night game. I think they have two primetime games. I think they'll have the Thursday night game, and I think that they'll probably get a Monday night game. I'm not sure that the league is buying into the Mike Vrabel free agent signing sweepstakes. I'm sorry, hype enough that they're going to have them on a Sunday night game yet. You never know. They might. Remember, though, you also have the flex option as well. They could get flexed into a Sunday night game later on in the season. But I would not be surprised. My prediction is they play two primetime games, a Thursday night and a Monday night.
So I could see three. I could see one of each. Thursday night, Sunday night, Monday night. Remember, that last Monday night game was that ugly Bears debacle with Bailey Zappi and Mac Jones.
But you got to remember, the Monday night game isn't what it used to be. The Sunday night game is now the premier primetime game.
True.
So I definitely see them getting a Monday night game before they get a Sunday night game.
Oh, so I agree with that, but I do think Kraft has enough pull where it's, hey, we were sort of dismissed last year. Let's get a little bit more this year. I wouldn't be surprised. But I'm with you. It's either going to be 2 or 3. It won't be, like back in the day where they had 6 or 7 in a year.
Well, it's hard to have pull when your team has gone 4-13 in back-to-back years. You got to remember now, they also have to be appealing. And the league got burned by the Patriots last year, if you remember, because they flexed into that Saturday game against the Chargers, and they got thumped. And that was supposed to be Drake Maye's coming out party nationally. He ends up getting hurt. I mean, again, I think at the end of the day, that's going to factor into this too. But I do think that with Vrabel here now and what they've done in free agency, I think there's enough there that the league, I think at the very least, would be comfortable putting them on Monday night. But nonetheless, we'll see. I definitely think they'll have more than one primetime game, though. Ken checks back in. This team, with the schedule, should easily win 8 to 10 games besides the division games will be tough. Okay, so you're saying besides the division games will be tough, not besides the division games. Because if that was the case, and all of a sudden Ken has them at 14 wins in the number 1 seed, that's a big jump.
Even I'm not going there.
I just said it, and we're going to get more into detail once we know their schedule and the way it breaks down in terms of dates. I think, at least on paper right now, like I said earlier, I think this is a 10-win team.
Agreed. I think the division's going to be a step down this year, too.
Yeah, Miami has a lot of question marks. Never mind the fact, can Tagovailoa stay healthy? The Jets are the Jets. They're perpetually rebuilding. They're in a permanent state of rebuilding. It's going to be Aaron Glenn's first year. I think they're going to struggle. And Buffalo, say what you will, as much as Buffalo has dominated the AFC East in recent years, and they've been one of the preeminent teams in the conference and in the league, the Patriots have actually hung in there with them. They've been able to go toe-to-toe with them, earning splits 2 of the last 3 years. So I don't think a split with them is out of the question. I could see them splitting with Buffalo again. Obviously, they beat him here in the season finale last year. Just want to remind Patriot fans one more time, to cost them the number 1 pick. But all of that being said, in all seriousness, they have proven the last few years, as good as Buffalo has been, they have proven that they can play with him and at least earn a split.
Completely agree. It's one of those. It feels like they're one of those teams that they're, it's we do what we do, and the Patriots are always seemingly sort of ready to go whenever they play Buffalo. So I'm with you.
And the away schedule, to your point earlier about the home schedule,
The
the away
travel,
schedule where you got to go to Baltimore, you got to go to Cincinnati, you got to go to Tampa, you got to go to Buffalo. It's
it's not
tough.
bad though. Yeah, but it's not like
But I agree with
going
you.
out west.
Right. I agree with you. I don't think it's brutal, though, because you've also got winnable games there with the Jets, Tennessee, New Orleans. You've got some winnable games there. So
yeah, and no international games this year either.
No, which is nice, and of course, like I said earlier, the NFL will be releasing the 2025 schedule next Wednesday night. Of course, the schedule will already be out by then anyway.
It'll be out by freaking Tuesday.
Right. It gets leaked anyway, piece by piece, and then eventually members of the media get their hands on it and they put it out anyway. Ken checks back in. I didn't say 14 wins in the number one seed. I know, Ken, I clarified. But this team has to be a solid 8-10 win team. Yes. And then he says, look at it this way. The Bills will be tough. Who knows what Miami is with Tua, and the Jets are the Jets, although Aaron Glenn seems like the real deal head coach. Yeah, well, I'm glad you have that opinion. I'll believe it when I see it. I didn't buy Aaron Glenn as a coordinator. I'm not quite sure I'm going to buy him as a head coach quite yet. But if you want to pump Aaron Glenn's tires, feel free, Ken. I'm good. I'm out on that right now. Of course, the other news of the day is the news that Julian Edelman will be the 2025 player inductee into the Patriots Hall of Fame. The reaction to this has been interesting to me. Of course, Edelman was voted in by the fans. The three finalists were him, guard Logan Mankins, and kicker Adam Vinatieri. Look, I could have told you 6 weeks ago when this was announced that Edelman was going to win the fan vote. That was a no-brainer. Mankins had no chance. Vinatieri had a shot, but in the end, recency bias trumps all rational thought. You knew it was going to be Edelman. I'm not surprised. I talked about this earlier in a quick video that I did, Kevin. For me, I think this is more of an indictment on the process than anything else. And I think this process that the Patriots are using right now for their Hall of Fame, I think it needs to change.
1,000%. Look, I wrote this maybe 4 or 5 different times in a story I put up today. This has nothing to do with Julian Edelman.
No, Julian Edelman deserves to be in, and he's 100%. An all-time great Patriot.
Yep, 100%. I wrote it today based on his playoff numbers by themselves. He can make a case for the Pro Football Hall of Fame, let alone the Patriots one. We don't need to get into that. But the fact that Adam Vinatieri is not getting in before him is it might sound like I'm speaking hyperbole. I'm not. It's almost offensive. None of this is possible without him. No. You are not, and this goes back to, I'll get to the Parcells thing in a minute, but how cool would it have been if those two were going in together this year? He brought Vinatieri in 96 as an undrafted free agent, and legitimately speaking, him, Vinatieri, Bledsoe, maybe you can say Bruce Armstrong, William McGinnis, and Ty Law. Tell me if I'm missing anybody, but in terms of foundational pieces for that first Super Bowl, they're all together. So the fact that Vinatieri is not in,
Armstrong wasn't on that team, but I get what you're saying.
So yes, so sure. But in terms of building throughout the 90s and stuff, he was one of those key cogs. But for him to not be in before someone that played in the back half of that dynasty, and again, I wrote this too, all the snowball pictures in bars, or him and Ken Walter hugging after the kick in St. Louis or against St. Louis. We don't have those pictures in bars everywhere across New England without Vinatieri. Patriots Place does not exist without Adam Vinatieri. So look, it's two things. You're right. It's the process, and it's just the fact that it's younger people now voting. And now I'm going to sound like an old person, but I remember how important Vinatieri was. But you got to think it's 30 years ago now, almost like 25 years ago. So, which is wild to think about. So
the majority of the people that vote for the Patriots Hall of Fame, I would say, if you were to look at the average age, it's probably people in their 20s, man. They were probably toddlers when he hit that kick against the Rams, or that kick against the Raiders, or even that kick against the Panthers. You're talking about people that were either toddlers or in kindergarten. I mean, they're not going to remember that. They're going to remember
No.
Edelman's circus catch against Atlanta in the Super Bowl.
Right. And again, I keep saying this. He is more than deserving, but he should next year. Like, put him in with Gronk next year or something. Because now the problem is, like, Gronk is up next year. He's going to get in before Vinatieri
Oh,
for the
yeah.
exact same reason.
Gronk would get in over any Patriot not named Tom Brady.
Correct.
I mean, he's
So
that
now,
popular around here. And the thing is, and the other thing that I think Vinatieri was up against is the fact that Gronk and Edelman have been front and center with the games with names and their dudes podcast and I will give them credit. They are staunch Patriot loyalists. You wouldn't have known listening to him talk in recent years. You wouldn't have known Gronkowski won a Super Bowl in Tampa Bay. You wouldn't have known that because he is such a staunch Patriot loyalist. So, and I'm not saying they were campaigning to get into the Patriots Hall of Fame. That's not what I'm saying at all. But that helps them as well because people remember that. And again, recency bias matters in all this. It matters because they're front and center. They're on Fox. They have their podcasts. They're constantly in front of you. They're on your computer screen. They're on your phone. They're on your TV screen. Adam Vinatieri, ever since he's retired, other than getting jacked and growing a beard, we don't know what he's done. I mean, the last time he made the news was because his kid was kicking a couple of years ago.
I was just going to say, when AJ made...
He doesn't have a show to pump his tires on.
No, you know? And look, I got a few comments, too, about the loyalty thing. Bill Belichick didn't pay him, not the other way around. So, because... And look, the fact that he played longer as a Colt is still kind of mind-boggling to me that he wore that uniform longer than he wore this one because of the memories he created here.
And I do think, by the way, I'm glad you brought that up. I do think that plays a part in this too.
Which stinks, but it is what it is, and I get it. But again, this has nothing to do with Julian Edelman. He is absolutely a Patriot Hall of Famer, but Adam Vinatieri deserves to go in far before he does. And again, I go back to you finally have Parcells going in. You finally close that chapter. How cool would it have been to have those two wearing a red jacket going in together in that weekend? So, again, congratulations to Edelman. That weekend's going to be awesome. I'm sure it's going to be well-deserved. But Adam Vinatieri deserves much better than he got. And now you're worried that he gets the Parcells treatment because of what we just talked about. You know, other guys are going to go in long before him, and you wonder if him going to Indy, if the fans have that grudge or just simply don't remember him. So I hope that's not the case, but man, he should have been in. He really should have.
Process needs to change, plain and simple.
100%.
Either the committee votes them in and you treat it like the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
Former players.
Or you say, you know what? You can vote 2 people in. Here are 3 people. Here are 4 people. Pick 2. The bottom line is this one-a-year thing, and I know why they're doing it. They're doing it because they want the Hall of Fame to stay relevant, and they want it to be a topic of conversation every year. And they want it to be something that's special. And I get that. And I love the Patriots Hall of Fame. And I think the Crafts do a wonderful job with that. I think Brian Morey does a wonderful job with that. I greatly appreciate the work of this committee. We know pretty much everybody on that committee. This is not a knock on them. But the bottom line is, to Kevin's point, he may not get in for a while. And that's a travesty because we know what he means to the Patriots and their history, specifically their recent history. He should be in the Patriots Hall of Fame. We're talking about a guy that's probably going to end up in Canton. Both of these guys are probably going to end up in Canton. Heck, Mankins might end up in Canton someday. But at the end of the day, Adam Vinatieri, quite frankly, should have been in already.
Yeah, the best way I could put it, and I wrote this earlier, when you write the 2000s or 90s and 2000s, even 2010s, Patriots history, Adam Vinatieri deserves a full chapter. Edelman, what, a page? You know what I mean? Like, that you can't.
No, I don't know if I'd go that far, but I get what you're saying.
So the easiest way to put it, none of this exists without Adam Vinatieri's right foot. I mean, that's my opinion.
Well, I don't know if I'd say none of it exists. I think that's strong. But again, I get what you're trying to say. You're trying to relay his impact. I understand that. But I do think if you're saying none of it exists, that's a pretty bold statement. I'm not sure I'd say that. But nonetheless, I get what you're trying to do here. You're talking about his impact, and his impact is immense. Ken checks back in to counter Stone here. Julian deserves it, although Adam and Logan should be in the near future. Well, I don't think either one of us said he doesn't.
No,
He
and
does deserve it.
I'm not sure Logan gets in. I wrote this too earlier. He's exactly what you want in terms of representing the team and that mean, nasty old lineman. I don't think he ever won here. And B, again, we just went through some of the names that are going to be coming up still. He's got a really, really steep uphill climb.
Ken checks back in. Adam won 3 Super Bowls for this team. He should be in the Patriots Hall of Fame. He won 2. I don't know if he won the Philadelphia one, but we all agree. We all as I just went through puberty, but we all agree he should be in. But again, like you just pointed out earlier, Gronkowski's up next year. Probably not going to happen. Thanks again for checking in, Ken. Appreciate you, man. Bill checks back in. Spelled Vinatieri wrong, but we still love you, Bill. Vinatieri, Colts equals Fisk, White Sox. It's interesting. That's an interesting comparison, and I'm glad Bill brought that up because Carlton Fisk played for the White Sox longer than he did for the Red Sox. And unless you were a kid in the 70s, early 80s, you forget he was even a member of the Red Sox. Like for me, I'm 50. I remember him as a Chicago White Sox. I never really saw him play for the Red Sox. I only saw him play for the White Sox. So that I think might play a part in this as well, is that, again, it goes back to my recency bias point that people are going to remember the last 5-10 years more than they're going to remember 15, 20, 25 years ago.
Yeah, no, it's a good comparison. See, I was thinking Johnny Damon to the Yankees. That's sort of more my age group. But look, they didn't want to pay him. Like, he didn't go to Indy to be a quote-unquote traitor. And I can go back to the fact that he was booed when he came back here. It's still one of the all-time worst moments in New England sports fans' history. That's embarrassing, given what he did for the city with those snowball kicks.
And it was a Philadelphia moment for Boston.
Yeah, it's a good way to put it. But yeah, no, 100%. He's, again, this doesn't have anything to do with Julian Edelman. It's all about Vinatieri.
Yeah, no. Listen, you're not going to get me to say a bad word about Julian Edelman. I love Julian Edelman as a player. Loved him as a player. One of my favorite Patriots from the dynasty.
You won 53 of him.
Yeah. I mean, who doesn't love Edelman? But at the end of the day, we just think that at this point, Vinatieri should have already been in. The fact that he's not, it's not right. But nonetheless, we don't want to beat the dead horse as well. We're going to move on here. All right, let's talk some college football here. The last few minutes we have left of the show. BC been pretty busy in the portal, fortifying their defense, specifically their front seven in the last 2 weeks. They recently added Elijah Boykin, an edge, who's 6'3", 230 pounds. Chris Maribel Jr., who they added a couple weeks ago from Wake Forest. He is 6'3", 293 pounds. He's probably going to play defensive tackle, defensive end, depending on what fronts they're in. Mekhi Byerson is a 6'4", 270-pound defensive end. And Josh Hewlett is a linebacker, formerly of Michigan, 6'2", 227 pounds. On paper, Kevin, all of these guys are really good scheme fits physically. BC's going to have a lot of holes to fill up front. Of course, George Rooks transferred out. He's at Syracuse now. Bryce Steele entered the portal. They've had guys leave the program, but I think they've done a pretty good job of replacing those guys with guys who I think potentially could step in and make a pretty big impact.
Their defense is much deeper than it was 2 weeks ago. We talked about this coming off spring ball. That linebacker depth just wasn't there. You still don't know what you're going to get from Owen McGowan or Davian Crouch coming back from injuries. So you hope they're 100%. You hope that them sitting out spring ball was more precautionary than anything else. And I think it was. I know you feel the same way, especially about those two guys, because those are key sort of linchpins to that defense if they're healthy. But I think these moves just sort of signify what we talked about coming out of spring ball, and they felt like they weren't deep enough at defensive end or linebacker, and then they've gone and solved the problem. So it's nice to see. I know there's a few D2 guys there that don't really get people excited, but this is what you're going to get with BC NIL. This is the type of player. Now, I will say the Josh Hewlett one, that really intrigues me. Coming out of Michigan, I feel like he's going to be, they might look at him as an impact guy right off the bat. So I can't wait to see what he brings to that linebacking core. But It's smart. It's building up the depth at positions that you didn't have it at before you get into training camp. So they've made the moves they need to make. I don't know. I know the recruiting period is dead right now, but I'd expect maybe one or two more names probably to come out of the portal and join BC. I'd expect them to be on defense. I really don't think they need anything on offense. I don't know if you feel the same way, but they should be pretty much set now, roster wise. Again, maybe aside from a piece or two. You feel the same way?
Yeah, I mean, I would maybe think about adding another tight end.
Sure.
Wouldn't be the
Yeah.
worst thing in the world to maybe add another quarterback into the mix. But I think overall, they're pretty much set offensively. It was really defensively, specifically along the front seven, that they needed to go out and bring in some additional bodies, and they've done that. Now, are they better than they were 2 weeks ago? That remains to be seen. I mean, again, losing Rooks, he was a pretty good player, and you can make
Big
the argument
loss.
that Maribel is a better player, quote, but I think that's a 1-for-1 in my opinion. It's really how are these other three guys going to fit in. But as we saw in the spring, we love their depth on the edge. They got guys, they're going to have 3 or 4 pass rushers that could potentially accumulate 5-10 sacks for them. They've got depth on the edge. They fortified the inside with the portal. You still have some question marks at linebacker. The secondary is loaded. So it was really, look, they went out and they filled their needs. And that's what Boston College is going to do in the portal. They're going to be active, but they're going to be very, very meticulous with who they go out and they bring in. So I think that Bill O'Brien and his staff have done a nice job filling not necessarily needs, but bringing in guys that can fill needs, but also, to your point, making
Yeah,
them.
so they're sort of just like just in case pieces, right? Like that's how I view them.
Yeah. UConn also was pretty active in the portal, adding Tamaris Walker, guard out of Maryland. He transferred in. They also added running back, or they kept, I should say, running back Jaden Brown. Jaden Brown had originally entered the portal. Then he came back. I really like the pickup of wide receiver Ty Bowman. He's coming in from Rice, a 6'2", 190-pound receiver. And they also added cornerback DeAndre Glover as well. The Huskies have been pretty busy. And again, Jim Mora and his coaching staff, just like O'Brien and his coaching staff, very meticulous in terms of who they're adding. They're targeting specific positions and adding guys that they think could step in and help out right away. But also, at the same time, they're filling needs. Of course, UConn lost a couple of guys in the portal after the end of spring practice. But nonetheless, again, they're looking to identify areas of need, and they've been able to fill those needs thus far in the portal. Like Boston College, I don't think UConn's done. I could see them coming back into the portal. Of course, they had several guys, most notably Cole Welliver and Mel Brown, jump into the portal. But nonetheless, Huskies have done some work as well.
It's funny, as outspoken as Moore has been, with the portal and how everything goes. The last 2 years, I don't want to say cleaned up, but think about how much impact those guys had last year. Like that team was successful last year, mostly because of portal guys. So I'd expect the same this year in terms of the impact that the newer players are going to have. Whatever Moore is doing, he's finding a way to assimilate those guys very quickly into that program and into that culture. So good for them. And we talked about this weeks ago that team should have high expectations now. Like the bar should be 7-8 wins for them, bare minimum. So, but I do like what Moore does in the portal in terms of trying to find the right guys culture wise, but also making sure, hey, they're going to have an impact on the field as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, and like Boston College, UConn is not, and you're going to see this with UMass as well. They're not just going to go out and get anybody. They're going to add guys that fit the culture and the scheme. And if you're UConn now, coming off a 9-4 season with a bowl win in the Fenway Bowl, you can be more selective in the portal. You don't necessarily have to go out there and just take anybody. You're going to go out there and get guys that fit your culture, that are going to fit in your locker room, and that are going to be productive football players and student athletes. And I think that they are doing that. Of course, big week coming up in the high school ranks as well, Kevin. It's showcase week starting this week. You're going to have several showcases. It actually started yesterday with the CIAC showcase down in Connecticut. Our Craig Boland was there for that. Locally, the Hockomock League will have their showcase on Sunday at Mansfield High School. Of course, you have the Connecticut Showcase Day a week from today, next Monday for the NEPSAC schools, and you're going to have the Massachusetts NEPSAC schools do their Showcase Day a week from tomorrow. We'll have full coverage of both of those days. We're going to try to get to as many schools as we can. It's not easy. We can't get to all of you. We apologize, but we're going to try to get to as many as we can. And of course, a week from Thursday, you also have the Catholic Conference Showcase over at Zavarian. And then in a couple of weeks, you're going to have the MVC Showcase as well on the 21st. But Showcase season is here. There's some really talented players that we're looking forward to seeing work out for college coaches.
There's two things that always stand out to me since we started covering these, and you can speak to this better than anyone. These things have freaking blown up. In the past, like
it's become
5
a
years,
thing now.
maybe.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure what it is, but I do know it's working. Because you look at the talent that's going Division One, and particularly major programs, Division One from the New England area. It's huge. And look, I know, Don Brown sort of scoured the area years ago, right? Like bringing guys to Michigan, and he sort of opened those floodgates. But now more than ever, the New England talent is being noticed. Like we know there's going to be 80, 90, 100 schools represented at some of these showcases.
Oh, yeah. Between the 2 days, yeah, you're going to get over 100 schools.
And
FBS and FCS that are going to show up to Connecticut and Massachusetts.
And major programs, Bama, Georgia, you name it, every Big Ten school. So that's the most impressive thing to me is just how much these have blown up. But again, it's also the second thing that stands out is just the New England talent. How much that entire scene has exploded. And sure, maybe it's oversaturated in terms of 7-on-7s, but these showcase days are massive with high school recruiting, particularly with the way the portal is now and so many high school kids getting overlooked. It's a way and look, most of these kids participating at these schools, they're probably going to get noticed, but some of those that weren't, that second, third tier, they're now going to get noticed by some major programs. So these things are massive. They're incredibly important now. I hope they're not going to be oversaturated.
It's too late for that. They already are. Everybody's doing them now because you have to do it. If you're a public school league, you have to do it. That's why the Hockomock League is doing it. That's why the MVC is doing it. They're all doing it now. They have to do it because part of the process, remember now, it's not just in college football that you have to recruit and keep your own guys. I mean, you got to do that in high school now. Yeah. You got to recruit and keep your own guys in high school now. So if you're a public school coach and you're going to keep your guys in your program, you need to show them and their parents that you're going to do whatever it takes to help them get recruited. And then you're going to do whatever it takes to get them in front of college coaches. And I'm not just talking about college coaches showing up to your campus on a visit. I'm talking about showcases like this. And so, again, I think at the end of the day, to your point about oversaturation, you're right that they are oversaturated, but we're well past that now. I mean, 2 years ago, it would have been a different conversation, but I think now they're popping up all over the place. Everybody and their mother's doing a showcase, but I think a lot of these are out of necessity. But I do think it's important to point out that the FBS schools and the Power 4 schools, unfortunately, for a variety of reasons, choice, NCAA rules, they're only going to go to so many campuses. They're not going to show up to every school, specifically the public schools. They may not even show up to the Catholic Conference schools. So my point is, if you're a public school athlete, if you're a Catholic Conference athlete, you know what? You're still going to get FCS schools on your campus. You're still going to get Division 2 and 3 colleges on your campus. You're going to get coaches from these schools that are going to be there to watch you, evaluate you, and take notes, and if they can, possibly have a conversation with you. You're going to see a lot of that. So even if Power 4 schools don't come rolling into one of these public showcases, you're still going to have a large number of coaches that are going to be there, specifically local coaches that want to be able to take a look at these guys. When I think of the class of 2026, there's some guys that I'm excited to see how they test and how they work out. Marcus Almeida and Carter Gooden down at Tabor Academy. I'm looking forward to seeing those guys in person. as well as Botan Varga and Peter Bork, among others. Marky Walbridge at St. Sebastian's. Anthony Hall, even though he's committed to North Carolina, I'd be curious to see if he works out. Caden Bennett is another guy that we're looking to see how he does. Dominic Funk, who is committed to Boston College. We're looking to see how he does. Rowan Aherns is another guy that we're looking to see how he does. So there's a lot of guys there, and of course he's down at Brunswick, but there's a lot of guys there, Kevin, that especially when it comes to the knapsack schools, there's a lot of guys there that we're looking forward to seeing. And again, like I said, we're going to try to get to as many schools as we can. This is not an easy endeavor. We only have so many freelancers, but we also know that you count on us for this coverage. So we're going to do the best we can, not only next week, but this week we're going to preview the showcases and give you some players to watch for and who are some guys that, should, if they're not already committed, should be committing pretty soon.
Yeah, the other thing too, the scouts that work those days, and you know this, and our runners know this, it's all the same guys. So they're making full days starting at about 5 a.m. and going to about 9 p.m., driving all over New England to make these showcases and hopefully find that next diamond in the rough who is a Division I athlete who ends up getting, his name called in the NFL draft. So I want to shout out those guys as well, because the scouting world is not an easy job to maintain, and it's not easy on families. It's not easy on just health in general. Like, those scouts deserve a lot of credit for what they do traveling the country, particularly around here those few days between Connecticut and Massachusetts. Because again, we talked to them throughout that day. This is stop 5, this is stop 6, whatever it might be. I haven't seen my family in 2 weeks, so. That's sort of another a non-talked about part of the entire, recruiting world is the work that the scouts do for all this as well.
And when you say scouts, you're talking about guys that work for 24/7 and Rivals and Prep Red Zone. I mean, these guys.
Well, and the team scouts as well.
Well, but they're college coaches. They're not scouts.
Yes.
I mean, but they're the position coaches.
Yeah, the scout. Yes, to your point, the other scouts as well, but. Just in general, the entire scene, I'm not sure sort of people fully grasp how big and how nonstop it is now.
And again, I'm looking forward to seeing some of the 27s work out as well. That is a very talented group, specifically at the quarterback position. Peter Bork, as I mentioned, down at Tabor. Isaiah Rogers, he's going to be working out next Monday, running back from Springfield Central. I mentioned Botan Varga. He'll be down at Tabor as well. Grady Holmes, Keegan Croucher. So Caden Drinkwater, another Tabor product. So it's going to be a lot of 27s, class of 27 guys that we're going to be watching as well, and class of 2028. So like I said, we'll have plenty of coverage for you on the showcase days this week and going into next week as well. All right, Stone, final thoughts here. I know it's almost past your bedtime here, so I think we need to wrap up.
I got chicken waiting for me.
Why don't you eat at normal hours? Why the hell are you eating chicken at 9:15 at night? Eat during normal hours.
Monday night, man, throws me off the show name. But no, actually, I got nothing. Just again, as usual, your mic cut out there. Thank God, it was perfect timing. As usual, stay with us again. As John said, we'll be all over the showcase days. I'll be down at Gillette both tomorrow and Friday for rookie minicamp. Curious to see how some of the young guys look on Friday. And as usual, no off season. This is actually busy season for us. So we're looking forward to keeping it rolling.
Well, Stone said it perfectly. Nothing left for me to say. All right, well, that'll do it for this week's episode of the New England Football Show. For Kevin Stone, I'm John Sarianides. We'll be back with you next week. Until then, stay safe, be healthy, be good. Peace.
Yeah.